Cops can only function when the community gives them their approval. The people massively outnumber the police, and therefore the police can only function. There's really only two ways police can function. One is in a police state where they are so numerous and so violent and so quick to use violence that people are afraid to take them on, which is what Donald Trump is advocating right now. And the second is when the people have respect for them because they have earned that respect. And since the Reagan Revolution and the hyper-militarization of our police, and those of you who are not old enough to remember what television looked like before Ronald Reagan became president, with, all of a sudden, starting in 1981, all of a sudden, TV exploded with all these shows about rich people and tough cops. And you look at the shows from the 60s and 70s and the 50s, and you see average people, the Jackie Gleasons and Lucille Balls living in average homes. It wasn't Dynasty, which came along with Reagan. And you see average police like, Andy of Mayberry, and then post-Reagan, Reagan started the process of giving surplus military equipment to the police departments, and then pretty soon it wasn't even surplus anymore. It was just a money pit for a money tree or whatever for the defense industry, for the weapons manufacturing industry. And now our police in the United States, unlike most of the rest of the world, the developed world anyway, average police, yes, any police department anywhere in the world can field riot police and SWAT teams. But our average cops are looking like, in many cities, are looking like an occupying army. And, nobody likes to be occupied. Without the consent of the governed, a phrase from the Declaration of Independence, without the consent of the governed, policing doesn't work. And frankly, I think that is symptomatically, that's one aspect of what we're seeing right now. Donald Trump, the White House, they turned the lights off in the White House last night. Like it was Halloween and he was out of candy. Instead of doing his job, he just decided to quit, went downstairs in the basement and hid. Or at least they did Friday night. He was hiding in the basement on Friday night. Presumably the same thing last night. And it's like, at what point do we say, okay, it's an illegitimate regime. Trump was not elected by the people. He was elected by an electoral college, a remnant of the era of slavery. The majority of the people did not vote for him. The majority of the people don't want him. The majority of the people are horrified by his presidency. And it's showing right now. Anyhow, we're going to have Amy Goodman in just a minute, and then I'll be picking up your calls. Stick around. It's coming up on 28 minutes past.
You're listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
And the rant that I just shared with you, by the way, will be posted over on buzzflash.com and commondreams.org. We'll be back. Well, it's an extraordinary time. This is the first full week of the Summer Free Speech TV Fund Drive. This is how we keep this network on the air. It's one of the things that helps keep this show on the air. If you find value in the product that we're producing, as it were, in the show that we're putting together, that a whole bunch of us that put a lot of work into, then please chip in. Please help us out. Help keep our show going and help keep us moving forward. And help keep us, or help us continue to spread the message of a better America, the possibilities of America. Yeah, it's so easy to throw stones, and I know that from time to time I just, I'll be reading news stories and just going, oh my God, this is just, this is terrible and this is terrible. But one of the things that I really try to do with this program is not just do complaint TV and radio programming, but instead to ask the question, why is this? How did this come about? What's the history of this? And not just the recent history of this, what's the really deep history of this? How do we get down to the roots of these problems and solve them? To mangle a metaphor. And You know, it's not simple and easy stuff. Louise and I put a lot of work into this program every single day. It's more than an 8-hour day just putting this program together for us. And the same is true of Sean and Nate and many of the other people who work on this program. And to do it and keep it going, there's infrastructure, there's costs, there's personnel, there's all that stuff. Plus, Free Speech TV, same thing. You've got a relatively small group of people. I think there's in the neighborhood of 20 people who work at Free Speech TV, which is really remarkably small for a television network, a national television network that is in literally tens of millions of homes. And if you include the internet, hundreds of millions of homes. And they're doing it on a shoestring. They've been doing it on a shoestring for 18, 19, 20 years, however long it's been. It's been quite a while. And I'm very proud and pleased that we've been part of Free Speech TV for, I believe, about a decade. And, a couple times a year we come to you and say, please help. And I realize, the coronavirus and all the unemployment and, it's a really tough time for a lot of people. And, if you're one of those folks, if you've lost your job, if you don't have any resources, don't feel bad about not being able to contribute. I absolutely understand, and nobody would think, poorly of you for that. If these are tight times or tough times, hang on, because I have a horrible feeling it's going to get worse before it gets better. But it will get better, and we will be part of making it better. And so if you have the means to help out Free Speech TV, if you have the ability to toss a few $100 or a few dozen dollars or even $5 or $10 toward Free Speech TV, or to become a sustaining member, to make a regular contribution that recurs every single month, that just is effortless, right? You give me your credit card number and just say, charge me $20 a month, and for the next year, or for the next 2 years, or for the next 6 months, or until I tell you to stop. And Free Speech will do that, and you help keep us going. And in fact, those sustaining gifts are among the very most important of all of our gifts, because those sustaining gifts help us budget. They help Free Speech TV know what's coming and what the expenses are going to be. Free Speech TV offers some premiums for people who make contributions. With a $20 gift, you have your choice. You can get the Thom Hartmann, proud student of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the car magnet that says, I'm voting, are you? With a $50 gift, again, 2 options, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, which is just brilliant, and the Free Speech TV webcam cover, either one of those available with a $50 gift. With the $75 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program mug with my mug on that mug. It's not a terrible picture. I kind of like it. With a $100 gift, you get 2 Free Speech TV face masks. Last week, Norma called and said, I just ordered my face mask, my face mask. That's wonderful, and please consider the same thing. It's a $100 gift. That's a lot of money for Free Speech TV. It helps out a lot. With a $120 gift, you get the social distancing kit. That's 2 Free Speech TV face masks and the Free Speech TV hand sanitizer. With a $120 gift, you get your choice. You can either get the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, or you can get the, actually you get 3 choices, or the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Who Stole Your Vote and How to Get It Back. With a $240 gift, you can hop on the line and we'll have a Zoom meeting, as it were, and a virtual meet and greet, off the air, unrecorded, just us. It'll be 5, 6, 8 people and me, and a small group, and we'll talk. And with a $1,000, and with a $360 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University box. That's the face masks, the Hidden History of the War on Voting, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, the Just Effing Vote t-shirt. And with a $1,000 gift, you can come to Portland and hang out with us when all this craziness is over. Please call now, 877-378-8669. We need to keep this network going. And frankly, I'd like to keep this show going. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you so much. Coming up on this week's Science Revolution, how do we stop authoritarians like Trump and Bolsonaro from killing more people in this pandemic? Trump and Bolsonaro, the presidents of the United States and Brazil, are essentially refusing to do anything consequential about an epidemic that is killing massive numbers of their own country's citizens. Bill Friess drops by. He's the science policy analyst with the Center for Food Safety on the newly finalized federal regulations on GMOs. And Beyond Nuclear's Paul Gunter also drops by on how America is unprepared for a nuclear accident during this pandemic. Find The Science Revolution wherever you get great podcasts. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Back in 2008, the Republican National Convention was going on in Minneapolis. I was sitting in an outdoor restaurant with a friend who was the one of the managers of our radio station there in Minneapolis when Minneapolis police chased a protester literally 30 feet from us, dragged him to the ground and started smashing his head into the ground. And then later that day, I was broadcasting live, and in walked Amy Goodman along with two of her producers, Nicole Salazar and Sharif Abdul Qudus. And well, let's get the story from her. Amy Goodman, the iconic, brilliant journalist, the host of Democracy Now!, author of multiple books. Amy, it's great having you back on the program. It's been a while since we've talked.
I know, Tom. It's great to be with you.
Thank you. Your thoughts on that day in 2008, what it said about Minneapolis and the culture of policing in that city then, and what we're seeing right now.
Well, it's just unbelievable for us to be back together again, but in these unbelievably difficult times, from the pandemic, the worst health crisis in a century. You didn't think it could get any worse, and then this happens in Minneapolis, and you have this mass uprising around the country. When I was watching CNN on Friday and seeing Omar Jimenez getting arrested by the state patrol in Minnesota as he was live broadcasting on the air on CNN, you couldn't get any more obvious than that. Of course, I couldn't help think back to 2008. It was Labor Day. It was September 1st, the first day of the Republican National Convention. It was following President Obama's, well, he wasn't president yet, but his convention in Denver. And we were covering the protests that day. And it was a beautiful blue sky day. It was in St. Paul. I went to the convention floor. My colleagues went to the TV studio to get ready for the show the next day. They saw a protest outside, ran outside to cover it. And before I knew it, I got a call, get over to 7th and Jackson, because Nicole and Sharif have just been brutalized and arrested. I was shocked, and I raced over there. And I asked to speak to one of the commanding officers because, it was a large parking lot. They had the whole area contained. If I could just get my colleagues out, fully accredited journalists holding camera and microphone. And I went up to one of the police officers and I said, can I get my colleagues out? And it wasn't seconds before he ripped me through the police line. Again, this wasn't any kind of melee. It was fully contained. They had a full cordon around the area, pulled my arms behind my back, threw me up against a car, and arrested me, handcuffed me and arrested me. I said, please don't arrest me. I just want to get my colleagues out. Then pushed me up against the wall onto the ground. I was looking for my colleagues, saw Sharif, demanded to be brought over. The Minneapolis cop who was accompanying me, I said, could you loosen my handcuffs? I can't even feel my hands. He tightened them. So then I was brought over to Sharif, and I said, what happened? They said they'd come to cover the protest. A phalanx of police officers came at Nicole as she was filming. She was shouting, press, press. They were shouting, on your face. She was up against the cars. It was a parking lot, and they threw her down on her face, dragging her by the legs so that was bloodying her face. First thing they did was to disable her camera, which is exactly what they didn't want, which is exactly what we see these police officers all over the country are trying to stop from happening. So I was taken to the police garage where they'd erected cages for the arrested protesters, and Nicole and Sharif were taken to jail. There was such an outcry about our arrest that finally they did release us after a number of hours. We ultimately sued the Minneapolis. It happened in St. Paul, but it's a national security event, so the Minneapolis police were in charge. So we sued the Minneapolis police, the St. Paul police, the Ramsey County office, and the Secret Service, because right before they took me onto the bus, they ripped the credentials from around my neck. They ripped off my credentials and Sharif's credentials. And I said to the police, "You're not allowed to do that." And they said, "That's not us, it's the Secret Service." So they were all in this together. It took us 3 years. We got a landmark settlement. And part of the settlement, though, was that they would train the Minneapolis, St. Paul Secret Service, the police, you could never tell, and I see that now, with all of these security events, you can't tell which authorities are arresting you. It's very hard to know the level from the state troopers to the police, which township, which county. But the idea was that they would be trained to deal with the press because it's absolutely critical. You know, there's a reason why freedom of the press is enshrined in the Constitution and the First Amendment, because the media is essential to the functioning of a democratic society.
Yeah, and now we have this report of this young woman, Linda Tirado, freelance photographer who has lost her left eye. She was shot in the face by the police in Minneapolis and left permanently blind in Atlanta. They dragged 2 college students out of their car. These police apparently have been fired. Kate Bryan, a journalist, has been keeping a running tab over on Twitter. I got this long list here. I won't go through it right now because we're
it's just
about
unbelievable.
3 minutes out from a hard break.
The Los Angeles Times and a group of reporters, the police directly shot them in Louisville, where Breonna Taylor was killed, and she's one of the African Americans who people are protesting all over the country. Police came into her house and shot her dead. So the Louisville reporters were out there covering the protests, and a police officer with his automatic weapon just directly shot at the camera this young reporter, and she is screaming and saying, "They're shooting us." It was with pepper balls. I mean, it is an intimidation tactic, and it is certainly following in the footsteps of everything that President Trump has laid out when he calls the media, the enemy of the American people.
Right, and let us not forget the murder of George Floyd, and the murder of Breonna Taylor, and the hunting and murder of Ahmaud Arbery. I mean, and on and on and on. And what this is bringing forward is this very real presence of essentially a police state in the United States. Reagan started this with this program back in the day. It was called the 1033 program, where surplus military gear could be given to police departments. Obama rolled that back, and Trump unrolled it back. And so far, $5.4 billion worth of military equipment has been given to police departments around the United States. And this was, by the way, all done in 1990 under the rubric of the war on drugs, right? And
that's right.
Is it your sense that we might have hit a point here, both MSNBC and CNN certainly, and you with Democracy Now! And Free Speech TV, have done a really good job of documenting how the police in the last few days have been literally singling out reporters to essentially punish them for reporting. And frankly, I think that there's an association between that and the continual demonization of the news media by Donald Trump. What are your thoughts, Amy? We have about 2 minutes to.
I mean, there's no question about that, and I think it's really important, Tom, that you centered in this story the police murder of George Floyd, because how is it that there has been this attention paid, certainly in the African American community? This is not unknown. It's that the videotape was rolling, and these were just bystanders. And it seems that they are targeting anyone at this point that is documenting, because when you see the horror of that moment, with Chauvin, the police officer, and the other two police officers on him from a different vantage point. You see the other two, and then one that seems to be like a standard lookout standing in front of them, stopping the bystanders from stopping this all from happening. They're just crying out, please stop. I mean, it's astounding that Chauvin sat there for almost 3 minutes, in addition to the 5 minutes of holding him down. In addition, while he was lifeless, he killed him on the spot. But we see it on videotape. It's that documentation that makes a difference, and that's why it looks like police are targeting journalists. They are documenting what's happening, and that has to be challenged. That has to be criminalized.
Yeah, my other big concern is that people who have videotaped, and there have been at least a half a dozen instances of these, people who have filmed with their iPhones the police murders of other black people have then been targeted for arrest themselves. And I'm very concerned about the 17-year-old girl who documented the murder of George Floyd. So,
yeah,
anyhow,
that's
Amy, I'm
very
sorry,
important.
we are out of time, but it's a huge subject, and thank you very much for dropping by.
Thanks so much, Tom.
Yeah, good talking with you. And then the circumstances are terrible, but it's nice to hear your voice again. Keep up the great work, Amy Goodman, the finest journalist working in America, in my humble opinion. Amy Goodman with Democracy Now!
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit thomhartmann.com for audio and video archives.
We'll be back with your calls after this. It's 45 minutes past the hour. Here on the Thom Hartmann Program, the place where despair is not an option. And welcome back. What a day. What a day. Jessica in Chicago. Hey, Jessica, what's up?
Oh, I love Amy. I'm glad you hit her on. And, Tom, can you please write a speech for Biden right now? I love your beginning. You're brilliant. And then
that'll be published over on Common Dreams and buzzflash.com today. So
Biden needs to get that stuff out there.
Yeah.
That's why I love watching you. And then I wanted to say I saw the strangest thing last night. It was so absurd, the coverage on ABC News. It was after 10:30. There was a group of very small protesters, about 20, and the cops numbered 3 to 1, maybe even more. They had everything. They had the SWAT, everybody there. But they had these 2 police officers with the German Shepherds, too. And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. Okay, the protesters, I got to say, were very wise in Chicago. They gave them 3 warnings to disperse. And I think it was late at night, and so they did. They just left. They got out of there after the 3rd warning. They had brought the paddy wagons in, too. But then what happened was crazy. It looked like an elderly black man. He was just in a T-shirt and pants, walking very slowly. And I honestly think he may have been homeless. But they go up to him with the dog, and they tell him, the dog will bite you, move faster. And they follow him with the dog, and they go, you've got to go faster, the dog will bite you. And I was like, what the heck? But then they left him alone after a bicyclist went through the intersection. And then they followed him with the dog, and they said, the dog will bite you, you got to get out of here. And the guy's just bike riding, and something happened where he fell off his bike. And it wasn't because of the dog. The dog wasn't close enough. But they go up even closer, and they still say, the dog will bite you. And I'm like, this is crazy. They had nothing to do. There were so many of them there, and they have to harass these poor people. So
this is the problem with people who go into policing specifically because it gives them power over other people.
Mm-hmm. And I'm so sorry about Amy's experiences with those police. That's the scary part. The press deserves to report this stuff.
Yeah, but at least she's still alive and she still has her eyes. I mean, I don't think that we've had any journalists killed so far. But, certainly what precipitated all this, the murder of George Floyd, is the most recent in a long, long line of police killings going back centuries in this country. And I think frankly, Americans right across the board, Americans of all stripes, these are, you look at the crowds, there are people of all races, all ages, all genders. I mean, people are showing up. We the people are showing up and saying, no, we've had enough. This is not how it's supposed to play out. This is not legitimate, and this administration is not legitimate, frankly.
And it scares Trump so badly. He did hide in his bunker list.
Yeah, absolutely. Jessica, thanks for the call. Great to hear from you, and thanks for watching Free Speech TV. We'll be right back. It's coming up on 10 minutes before the hour. Stick around. Thom Hartmann here. Did you know that the Second Amendment was written to protect the slave patrols in South Carolina and Georgia back in the day? It's in my new book, The Hidden History of Guns and the Second Amendment, available wherever you find great books. Hey, we have a brand new video up at thomhartmann.com for the people who are subscribers or supporters to our program. And this one's about national health insurance and why and how we really need a single-payer national health care system, whether you call it Medicare for all, or you call it single-payer, or you call it whatever. Medicare for all, it has a lot of appeal because, generally speaking, Medicare is positively viewed. That's what they call it in Canada. It's called Medicare. And, which makes sense, care for people using medicine. We would save at least $150 billion a year just on billing. You've got hospitals in the United States that have entire floors devoted to billing. Hospitals in Canada have one desk with, one or two people sitting at that desk, handling the billing. It's just crazy. And people would get better care. They get more comprehensive care. Our entire nation gets healthier. And there's a whole bunch of essentially bullet points to build this argument for Medicare for all over at thomhartmann.com. You can check it out right now. Dogcleanphone.com, code TOM, THOM. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. Glenda in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Hey, Glenda, what's up? What's on your mind today?
Well, you started your program today talking about the race massacre here in Tulsa in 1921. Back in the 1980s, I was told to make this brief. Back in the 1980s, I met a survivor of the massacre.
Oh, my.
Her mother, she and her siblings, she was around 12 at the time, walked following the railroad track when the riot started, the massacre began. They walked from the Greenwood area to a small town north of Tulsa following the railroad tracks. Their father stayed behind. He was a businessman. He had a business. They had a home. Stayed behind to take care of things. When they were in Collinsville for a couple of 3 days, and then they walked back to Tulsa. Their father had been murdered. The business had been destroyed, burned to the ground, and so had their home. So they were a family who lost everything. When I met her, I met her in the 1980s. She was an elderly woman. But her story made me cry. So I just thought I would share that. It's a personal experience.
Yeah, who can imagine? Well, I guess we can all imagine, but it's like, for white people in America, this is an alien reality by and large. For black people in America, oh yeah, of course, that's what happened. It's just we have to fix this. We have to fix this. And in the next hour, I'm going to be talking about a specific way that I think that we can at least start to fix it. But Glenda, thank you for sharing that story. Carolyn in Lake Isabel, California. Hey, Carolyn, what's on your mind?
Hello. Yes, I'm calling because I'm 80 years old. I was shocked to hear about the Tulsa massacre. It is unreal that...
Isn't it amazing that it's not a larger part of American history, that it's not taught in our schools?
Oh my God! They told me to try to get my words together, but my father worked for an oil company when I was young, and we lived in all of those states up Texas, Oklahoma, up to the Dakotas, and I went to school there, and all of that. Never once did I ever hear about this, about the massacre, and it made me cry that, okay, people nowadays, or not nowadays, but then, they were working for a living and you did this and that and you accepted it as truth, what you read in school and what my parents were not biased, so I never heard any of this at home, but I couldn't believe it. I was shocked. I'm still shocked.
Yeah. Well,
and that's when I voted for Obama. I thought, okay, well, he's going to be able to do more because he's got his thoughts and thoughts from all of his growing up experiences, that we would have a better way. And here we are. I've been home at my house for 3 months, not with any humans except the person that delivers my meals. And the last I was thinking was the pickup truck with the guys killing a man in the street, shooting them. And then I hear about this, and then we have these, what's going on now. Oh, my goodness. It's just, how does this happen? I mean... Yeah.
Well, Carolyn, what you are demonstrating is, in your shock, is... I think a really important phenomena, which has largely come about in the last decade as a result of technology, of cell phones that have cameras in them and are connected to the internet wirelessly. And that is that all of a sudden, relatively speaking, white people in America are starting to realize in their gut, as a real thing, what the actual life experience of black people in this country has been like for 400 years and continues to be. Literally, I've ranted about this in the past. The white privilege, the essence of white privilege isn't, of course there's things, like jobs and economics and whatnot, but it's literally being white means you can walk out of your house and not worry that the color of your skin is going to cause you to get attacked. It means that you can walk through a store and not be followed. It means that you can walk into a restaurant and not get a crappy place to sit. It means that you will be treated as a human being rather than something less than a human being. And of course, it means, generally speaking, that violence is not visited upon you the way it is upon black people. So that's why I started this thing out saying that, or this hour out saying that I think that we may be at a turning point in the United States. I hope we are at a turning point. It seems that this concatenation of the virus and Trump's horrible response to it, and the increasingly visible police murders and other and harassment. Just Amy Cooper in New York. With Mr. Cooper, I'm forgetting his first name, I'm going to call the police on you. I mean, just all of this stuff. I think America is starting to wake up. I hope.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
So we have a new video up for people who are supporters of the Thom Hartmann Program. Specifically, it's over at thomhartmann.com. talking about language, how we use language. Language matters tremendously. And we have chosen as a society, as a culture, as media, as political leadership, et cetera, not to refer to people like Steve Mnuchin, who threw thousands of people out of their homes illegally during the banking crisis, as looters, not to refer to Rex Tillerson, whose oil company has ravaged much of the third world, literally destroying people's lives, killing people, poisoning people. We don't refer to them as looters. We don't refer to the police who go into neighborhoods and kill people, minorities, particularly African Americans. We don't refer to them as looters, stealing their lives. But when black people rise up and say, no, enough, we call them looters. There's something wrong with this. Check it out. It's at thomhartmann.com. Well, it's an extraordinary time. This is the first full week of the Summer Free Speech TV Fund Drive. This is how we keep this network on the air. It's one of the things that helps keep this show on the air. If you find value in the product that we're producing, as it were, in the show that we're putting together, that a whole bunch of us that put a lot of work into, then please chip in. Please help us out. Help keep our show going and help keep us moving forward, and help keep us, or help us continue to spread the message of a better America, the possibilities of America. Yeah, it's so easy to throw stones, and I know that from time to time I just, I'll be reading news stories and just going, oh my God, this is just, this is terrible and this is terrible. But one of the things that I really try to do with this program is not just do complaint, TV and radio programming, but instead to ask the question, why is this? How did this come about? What's the history of this? And not just the recent history of this. What's the really deep history of this? How do we get down to the roots of these problems and solve them? To mangle a metaphor. And it's not simple and easy stuff. Louise and I put a lot of work into this program every single day. It's more than an 8-hour day just putting this program together for us. And the same is true of Sean and Nate and many of the other people that work on this program. And to do it and keep it going, there's infrastructure, there's costs, there's personnel, there's all that stuff. Plus, Free Speech TV, same thing. You've got a relatively small group of people. I think there's in the neighborhood of 20 people who work at Free Speech TV, which is really remarkably small for a television network, a national television network that is in literally tens of millions of homes. And if you include the internet, hundreds of millions of homes. And they're doing it on a shoestring. They've been doing it on a shoestring for 18, 19, 20 years, however long it's been. It's been quite a while. And I'm very proud and pleased that we've been part of Free Speech TV for, I believe, about a decade. And, a couple times a year we come to you and say, please help. And I realize, the coronavirus and all the unemployment and, it's a really tough time for a lot of people. And, if you're one of those folks, if you've lost your job, if you don't have any resources, don't feel bad about not being able to contribute. I absolutely understand, and nobody would think, poorly of you for that. If these are tight times or tough times, hang on, because I have a horrible feeling it's going to get worse before it gets better. But it will get better, and we will be part of making it better. And so if you have the means to help out Free Speech TV, if you have the ability to toss a few $100 or a few dozen dollars or even $5 or $10 toward Free Speech TV, or to become a sustaining member, to make a regular contribution that recurs every single month, that just is effortless, right? You give me your credit card number and just say, charge me $20 a month, and for the next year, or for the next 2 years, or for the next 6 months, or until I tell you to stop. And Free Speech will do that, and you help keep us going. And in fact, those sustaining gifts are among the very most important of all of our gifts, because those sustaining gifts help us budget. They help Free Speech TV know what's coming and what the expenses are going to be. Free Speech TV offers some premiums for people who make contributions. With a $20 gift, you have your choice. You can get the Thom Hartmann, proud student of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the car magnet that says, I'm voting, are you? With a $50 gift, again, 2 options, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, which is just brilliant. and the Free Speech TV webcam cover. Either one of those available with a $50 gift. With the $75 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program mug with my mug on that mug. It's not a terrible picture. I kind of like it. With a $100 gift, you get 2 Free Speech TV face masks. Last week, Norma called and said, I just ordered my face mask, my face mask. That's wonderful, and please consider the same thing. It's a $100 gift. That's a lot of money for Free Speech TV. It helps out a lot. With a $120 gift, you get the social distancing kit. That's 2 Free Speech TV face masks and the Free Speech TV hand sanitizer. With a $120 gift, you get your choice. You can either get the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, or you can get the, actually you get 3 choices, or the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Who Stole Your Vote and How to Get It Back. With a $240 gift, you can hop on the line and we'll have a Zoom meeting, as it were, and a virtual meet and greet, off the air, unrecorded, just us. It'll be 5, 6, 8 people and me, and a small group, and we'll talk. And with a $1,000, and with a $360 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University box. That's the face masks, the Hidden History of the War on Voting, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, the Just Effing Vote t-shirt. And with a $1,000 gift, you can come to Portland and hang out with us when all this craziness is over. Please call now, 877-378-8669. We need to keep this network going. And frankly, I'd like to keep the show going. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you so much. It's ironic that reading the Notes on a Nervous Planet by Matt Haig.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
As we look at the police murder of George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and others, we find that, obviously there is a problem intrinsic to the way we police in America. We had a long conversation about this last week, how European policing the whole concept of policing is very different than the American concept of policing. Our form of policing largely grew out of the slave patrols in the South. Many communities in the United States, right up until the late 1800s, had no police departments at all, and or a very small, de minimis police presence. But there have been a couple of things recently that have made this situation far worse. I mentioned the 1033 program that came along with Reagan, the Reagan-Bush administration. Really, it was started in 1980 by George Herbert Walker Bush, but it was first proposed in the 1980s during Reagan. But I think perhaps more destructive is this concept of qualified immunity. Back in 1967, in the United States, you could, by and large, it didn't happen that often, but you could sue, and by and large, people of color were excluded from having the ability to do this just because of the simple racism built into the entire system. But you could sue police if they mistreated you. You could sue police departments, you could sue cities, you could sue individual police officers. And this started to change in 1967. In 1967, there was a Supreme Court case. Well, what happened was there was an African-American man who was in a bus station in Mississippi, in Jackson, Mississippi, and there was a whites area to the bus station, and he sat down in the whites area. Now, 2 years earlier, of course, the Civil Rights Act and Voting Rights Act had been passed. Whites-only areas were illegal. And in fact, in 1965, in late 1965, the Supreme Court had put their stamp of approval on that and said that it was no longer a crime for black people to be in, quote, whites-only areas. But nonetheless, these two Jackson, Mississippi police, 2 years later, 1967, arrested this black man for sitting in the whites-only area. He sued and took it all the way to the Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court concluded that because these officers, in good faith, did not know that 2 years earlier the Supreme Court had ruled that that was no longer something that they could enforce, that he could not pursue his claim for justice against these police officers. So that began that there was a qualified immunity at that point based on the idea that they were operating in good faith. It was called good faith immunity. That went on steroids in 1982 when a conservative majority on the U.S. Supreme Court ruled in a case called Harlow v. Fitzgerald that, and this, by the way, this had to do with people who worked in the Nixon administration. It was not, the word police does not exist anywhere in this ruling. I read it yesterday. I spent 2 hours reading the Supreme Court ruling and the dissent and, and everything, right? And the background of the case. It was all about whether a citizen could sue people in the Nixon administration for some of the crimes that Nixon committed, basically, against, that echoed down to those individual people. And the conclusion that the Supreme Court came to was that people in the executive branch, and they extended this, by the way, at the time to the legislative and judicial branches, basically people working in government have what the Supreme Court referred to as qualified immunity, which means that if they are doing their job, and they're doing their job without intentional malice, and in the course of doing their job, they cause harm to somebody, that somebody can no longer sue the police because the police are immune. Well, actually could no longer sue the president, could no longer sue John Ehrlichman, who worked for the president, could no longer sue the Supreme Court, could no longer sue members of Congress, whatever. Now, there's actually a history to this, but, it's way wonky and not necessary. But that 1982 decision, within a year, the Supreme Court and a number of lower courts had decided that qualified immunity that they had granted to these government employees of these, at the highest levels of these three branches of government, also applied to police officers all across the United States, whether they were federal police, the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, whether they were state police, or whether they were local, sheriffs, county sheriffs, or municipal police, that right across the board, basically, you couldn't sue them unless you met this insanely high standard of proof. And that's why cop after cop after cop who have killed people have gotten off. And interestingly, there is a movement on the right to do away with qualified immunity for police, specifically for police. And there's also a movement on the left to do away with qualified immunity for police. And this is a good thing. I'm doing away with it, this movement. Julian Castro is going to be introducing legislation this week in the U.S. House of Representatives to end qualified immunity. I believe there's a couple of senators who are talking about introducing legislation. The Supreme Court has right now 10 cases in front of them. They haven't chosen if they're going to pick one of them, multiple ones, or none of them. But it's widely expected among court watchers, that they will make that decision this week. They have 10 cases challenging qualified immunity for police officers, giving them an opportunity to essentially amend or partially reverse their own 1982 decision. Keep in mind, Congress never made these rules. So it may well be that one of the outcomes of this spasm is the wrong word, this outpouring of outrage over the murder of George Floyd and police brutality in general and right across the board will be actual reform. Now, the police are not the only people who have qualified immunity. In the 1990s, in 1996, a piece of legislation was passed that gave qualified immunity to internet companies. And this is why white supremacist cops who are planning and for that matter, white supremacists in general, who are planning violence against people of color, have all these, hundreds apparently, maybe thousands of private Facebook groups where they sit around and plan what they're doing. And the reason why you can't sue Facebook for this is called Section 230 of the Decency Act, which is an amendment to the Telecommunications Act of 1934, that says that basically, the platform isn't responsible. Now, prior to 1996, that immunity did not exist. And back in the early 1980s, for about 15 years, myself, Nigel Peacock, Sue Nethercutt, we ran forums on CompuServe. We had almost 30 of them. The tech support forums for desktop publishing, IBM PCs, Macintoshes, a forum on the JFK assassination, a forum on ADHD, a forum on UFOs. And CompuServe paid us really well for this. We made a good living. And frankly, if we were to do away with Section 230, which oddly enough, Trump is talking about doing because he's pissed off at Twitter, if we were to do away with Section 230, Mark Zuckerberg, instead of being worth $77 billion, might end up only worth $70 billion because he'd have to start hiring people to do what we did for CompuServe back in the 80s and early 90s, which is keeping the message boards clean.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
So frankly, in my opinion, we need to end qualified immunity for the police and we need to end qualified immunity for Facebook. We'll be back. And welcome back. Let's see here. John in Minneapolis. Hey, John, what's on your mind today?
I wanted to say, I remember the Republican convention here, when Amy Goodman was here, and I also remember she did a story about a paid provocateur. The only violence that happened was like 2 or 3 people that were egged on by a paid provocateur that had, I believe, some connection with the national security, NSA. And
really? Paid by whom?
Paid by the federal government, ultimately.
So a provocateur who was an employee of the federal government, you mean?
Well, he was contracted, apparently. He did this as, for a living. I believe it was.
Contracted specifically to disrupt a demonstration?
He wasn't there to disrupt it. He was there to make it violent. He was egging on a bunch of young people who they convicted. Nothing happened to him at all. You can talk to her. I think it's probably, recorded. She has a record of it because I remember watching the broadcast. Now, this since 9/11, we have a militarized police, and we live now almost to the point where it's a fascist. We live under a fascist regime. The Republican Party are at war with people like us. They don't like us. They don't like Minneapolis. And I think even though, some of the violence and arson and looting happened, in those neighborhoods by people that live there, a good portion of the violence was perpetrated by outside people, and it was recorded. They weren't black, brown, or American Indian people that lived in that neighborhood.
The first building that got smashed, the windows got smashed out of that auto parts store, it's on camera, was a white guy. With a black umbrella, and only the police at the time knew that there was a Predator drone flying above. And of course, the umbrella protesters in Hong Kong use umbrellas to keep the drones from identifying them. And he was later confronted by a black protester, and he just turned and walked away. And people in Minneapolis are you live in Minneapolis, are suggesting that he's a cop. I don't know that he is or not. I'm not sure. He's been definitely identified, so I don't want to toss a name.
He is not a cop. They know that, but they need to go after these people because I think it will be really interesting to find out possibly that these people are paid provocateurs by who knows what organizations that do this. I mean, where do they find the time to go from city to city with guns and whatnot, and how do they fund themselves? That's what I think is really, needs to be looked into. But I think that it would be really interesting because I think there's a whole chain that you could probably follow back to the other party, the Republican Party, which is a faction that doesn't care, if even this state has proper PPE, has, testing equipment, that they requisition it for themselves. They have plenty of protective gear for themselves. The people, the riot police and gear for, the police departments.
But not for us. Yeah, I'm with you. John, thank you for the call. We'll be right back. It's 20 minutes past the hour. We'll be shortly. Stick around. We'll be right back. Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. Welcome back. 20 minutes past the hour. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. Kenyatta in Los Angeles. Hey, Kenyatta, what's up?
I wanted to let you know that you had mentioned reforming the police, but you cannot reform the police, which comes from the word policy, as you know, unless you reform his story. You can't reform the police until you reform history, Tom. That's the bottom line. And when you speak of police cars and people a certain age refer to police cars as black and whites, you think that that's some type of coincidence? It is not. This country, you spoke of looting, the country itself was looted. So let's be honest, because I already see this going nowhere. This whole, once again, a discussion on race. I had a Romanian friend who told me once, she said in a very thick Transylvanian accent, the future is known, Ron. It is certain. It is past that is always changing. Now, you had an 80-year-old woman, God bless her, who said she did not know about the Greenwood Massacre. I wrote an article, in fact, the first and only article I had nationally syndicated. In fact, you congratulated me for it. But God bless you. 2 years ago, called The Black Death. It can be found over at OEN, Op-Ed News. And Greenwood, the Black Wall Street, is still being, now all of a sudden people are uncovering this. I'm in my late 50s. I've been knowing about it for years. That's what I'm talking about, the history. The history has to change. Why is this news to people?
Well, that's the thing, Kenyatta, you're African American. I mean, the Greenwood is, I'm assuming, well known to African Americans across the country. It is invisible to white people.
That's my whole point, Tom.
Yeah, well, I'm agreeing with you.
Okay. Yes. Now let me say this to you about Greenwood, because this is really important. Greenwood was special because there were many massacres in the late and the early 18th and 19th centuries of black people in black towns. Rosewood, Opelousas, I could go on and on. But Greenwood, not only because those black people were so wealthy, but let me tell you why it's so unique. It is the first time that aerial bombs were dropped on civilians in the United States. It's only happened 3 times.
I remember Philadelphia,
Philadelphia move. That's what I'm telling you.
Project Move.
The only times it's ever happened have been against black people, and whoever's going to call you after I'm off and say, well, what about Pearl Harbor? Pearl Harbor was not a state at the time. It was trust territory. It
was also not the United States bombing its own cities.
This is what I'm telling you. It's only happened twice in this country, and it's been against black people. There's a parable there. Now, I want to tell you, I want to say something real quick about the insult, the 3 deaths. The 3 deaths. You see, and I'm so glad you did this today, Tom. I'm so glad you're the first major person in the media to say that this isn't about George Floyd. This is about Breonna Taylor. This is about Emmett Till. This is about Trayvon Martin, Tamir Rice, Oscar Grant. That's what this is about. And it keeps happening. The only time there's ever civil insurrection in this country by black people is because of police abuse. Every time. Every time. And the insult has already started. You see, killing George, that's the first killing, to kill the body. Then the second killing is to assassinate his character. Story's already out. Oh, he had an armed robbery conviction. See, because that then says, well, his life was worthless. And then the third killing, and they're already setting this up, is to demoralize black people, because charging this guy with third-degree murder, and I'm going to tell you why it's first-degree murder. First of all, he knew his victim. And when George kept saying, I can't breathe, I can't breathe. No, he said repeatedly I'm trying to get it together here. More significantly important words, and that was, don't kill me. And now that I think about that and I look at that video, he's telling some guy he knows, don't kill me. I'm almost willing to bet that this was a hit.
Oh, those two guys worked together for 17 years as bouncers at a club.
That's what I'm talking about. He knew his victim just like Amber Geiger knew hers. Lastly, I want to say this to you, Tom, if I can. One of the proudest days of my life was in 1992 during the riots. I had to traverse from Anaheim to where I lived in Culver City. The place was on fire. About noon, my supervisor said, hey, look, you guys are out of here.
Was this when you were a cop?
No. Okay. Way after. No, I'm in private industry, working for a software company. And but we were in Anaheim in Orange County, and, people got scared once that verdict came down. But again, it was not about Rodney King. It was about LaTosha Harlins. That's what lit the fuse. But anyways, I get where I'm going, get off the freeway. I'm meandering. I end up at Florence and Normandy, and there's this red truck there, and I'm going like, wow, that's weird. It's just busted out and everything. I would later find out that that's where Reginald Denny had just gotten beaten. They had taken him away by that time. I managed to get to Culver City, and when I got to Culver City, there was a checkpoint. I'm about 3 blocks from the house. And there's this very young Culver City police officer who draws down on me with an M16 as I get to the checkpoint. And I guess I surprised him because when he drew down on me, I was just incensed at that point. I opened the door, and I said, what are you going to do? You're going to shoot me? And at that point in time, I did not see the contingent of cars behind me, but all of these brothers, black men, they got out of the car, and they said, in words I can't say on the air, yeah, expletive. What, you going to kill us all? You're going to kill us all? And at that point, the sergeant came over and told him to shoulder that weapon, and we went on. And that's the day I felt like white people must feel every day.
Yeah, I got it. Kenyatta, thank you. It's always good to hear from you. And keep up the great writing. We'll be back. It's 28 minutes past the hour coming up on it. We'll be back with more of your calls and the news of the day on the other side of this break. Stick around. It's the Thom Hartmann Program, your media support group for We the People.
Listening to the Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Right back on the other side of this with more of your calls in just a moment. For people who are supporters of the Thom Hartmann Program. Well, it's an extraordinary time. This is the first full week of the Summer Free Speech TV Fund Drive. This is how we keep this network on the air. It's one of the things that helps keep this show on the air. If you find value in the product that we're producing, as it were, in the show that we're putting together, that a whole bunch of us that put a lot of work into, then please chip in. Please help us out. Help keep our show going and help keep us moving forward, and help keep us, help us continue to spread the message of a better America, the possibilities of America. Yeah, it's so easy to throw stones, and I know that from time to time I just, I'll be reading news stories and just going, oh my God, this is just, this is terrible and this is terrible. But one of the things that I really try to do with this program is not just do complaint, TV and radio programming, but instead to ask the question, why is this? How did this come about? What's the history of this? And not just the recent history of this, what's the really deep history of this? How do we get down to the roots of these problems and solve them? To mangle a metaphor. And, it's not simple and easy stuff. Louise and I put a lot of work into this program every single day. It's more than an 8-hour day just putting this program together for us. And the same is true of Sean and Nate and many of the other people who work on this program. And to do it and keep it going, there's infrastructure, there's costs, there's personnel, there's all that stuff. Plus, Free Speech TV, same thing. You've got a relatively small group of people. I think there's in the neighborhood of 20 people who work at Free Speech TV, which is really remarkably small for a television network, a national television network that is in literally tens of millions of homes. And if you include the internet, hundreds of millions of homes. And they're doing it on a shoestring. They've been doing it on a shoestring for 18, 19, 20 years, however long it's been. It's been quite a while. And I'm very proud and pleased that we've been part of Free Speech TV for, I believe, about a decade. And, a couple times a year we come to you and say, please help. And I realize, the coronavirus and all the unemployment and, it's a really tough time for a lot of people. And, if you're one of those folks, if you've lost your job, if you don't have any resources, don't feel bad about not being able to contribute. I absolutely understand, and nobody would think, poorly of you for that. If these are tight times or tough times, hang on, because I have a horrible feeling it's going to get worse before it gets better. But it will get better, and we will be part of making it better. And so if you have the means to help out Free Speech TV, if you have the ability to toss a few $100 or a few dozen dollars or even $5 or $10 toward Free Speech TV, or to become a sustaining member, to make a regular contribution that recurs every single month, that just is effortless, right? You give me your credit card number and just say, charge me $20 a month, and for the next year, or for the next 2 years, or for the next 6 months, or until I tell you to stop. And Free Speech will do that, and you help keep us going. And in fact, those sustaining gifts are among the very most important of all of our gifts, because those sustaining gifts help us budget. They help Free Speech TV know what's coming and what the expenses are going to be. Free Speech TV offers some premiums for people who make contributions. With a $20 gift, you have your choice. You can get the Thom Hartmann, proud student of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the car magnet that says, I'm voting, are you? With a $50 gift, again, 2 options, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, which is just brilliant, and the Free Speech TV webcam cover, either one of those available with a $50 gift. With the $75 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program mug with my mug on that mug. It's not a terrible picture. I kind of like it. With a $100 gift, you get 2 Free Speech TV face masks. Last week, Norma called and said, I just ordered my face mask, my face mask. That's wonderful, and please consider the same thing. It's a $100 gift. That's a lot of money for Free Speech TV. It helps out a lot. With a $120 gift, you get the social distancing kit. That's 2 Free Speech TV face masks and the Free Speech TV hand sanitizer. With a $120 gift, you get your choice. You can either get the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, or you can get the, actually you get 3 choices, or the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Who Stole Your Vote and How to Get It Back. With a $240 gift, you can hop on the line and we'll have a Zoom meeting, as it were, and a virtual meet and greet, off the air, unrecorded, just us. It'll be 5, 6, 8 people and me, and a small group, and we'll talk. And with a $1,000, and with a $360 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University box. That's the face masks, the Hidden History of the War on Voting, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, the Just Effing Vote t-shirt. And with a $1,000 gift, you can come to Portland and hang out with us when all this craziness is over. Please call now, 877-378-8669. We need to keep this network going, and frankly, I'd like to keep the show going. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you so much. Coming up on this week's Science Revolution, how do we stop authoritarians like Trump and Bolsonaro from killing more people in this pandemic? Trump and Bolsonaro, the presidents of the United States and Brazil, are essentially refusing to do anything consequential about an epidemic that is killing massive numbers of their own country's citizens. Bill Freese drops by. He's the science policy analyst with the Center for Food Safety on the newly finalized federal regulations on GMOs. And Beyond Nuclear's Paul Gunter also drops by on how America is unprepared for a nuclear accident during this pandemic. Find the Science Revolution wherever you get great podcasts. It's that time of year where we celebrate Memorial Day. We memorialize the Americans who have died in our wars, in the Vietnam War, in the Iraq War, in the Afghanistan War. You're on the edge all Elois, I suspect I'm mispronouncing your name. Elois in Los Angeles? You're on the air?
Hi. Yes. Hello. Elois Duncan is my name. You know,
Elois.
I was just going to...
Thank you.
Elois, yes. My family originally moved to Tulsa in 1915 from Louisiana. And, of course, when the riots came, one of my cousin's houses was burnt down. And I was told the U.S. military bombed the area. My Aunt Carrie was born in 1903 and lived through this, and in her 90s moved to San Diego. She died at 104. She was taken care of by another one of her nephews, Roger Duncan, who's in his 90s now, and I've been talking to him and calling and writing him by email to ask because I wanted to put something together regarding the Duncan family. And I was told that she was given a document acknowledging her ordeal in Tulsa at that time by the Bush administration. And now the Duncans live all over the U.S. in California, New York, Michigan, Washington, D.C. And the descendants are teachers and realtors and there's a professor now, and doctors, lawyers, architects, and some of and a couple of people who were airplane designers, I think that's what it's called, and the rest of us regular folks. And this was, of course, not without great effort after 1921. And I just wanted to say also that I was further asking my cousin information about what happened when he was trying to get a house, and he said that one of my uncles, who was in real estate, was helping him back in, I guess, 1948 or after that. And Thurgood Marshall and Lauren Miller were the attorneys, and they were busy helping him because he was having a housing problem. Because in Shelley versus Kramer, 334 U.S. 1, 1948, is the trademark or case, the United States Supreme Court case, which held that courts could not enforce racial covenants on real estate. But I know that continued because my uncle Mallory was the first to buy a house west of the Red Line on Crenshaw Boulevard. and he bought it in Windsor Hills, California. And they went through quite a lot of stuff because, of course, the people in the neighborhood were very unhappy. The homes there on Windsor Hill are worth millions of dollars now. And I also wanted to talk about my one of my cousins, whose name is Taylor. He's a descendant of the Duncans, but he was named Pete Taylor, and he fought in the Battle of the Bulge. I thought that all folks who fought in the Battle of the Bulge were white, but knowing people from Louisiana, many of them, and across the nation, you don't have to just be from Louisiana. You could be dark brown to white, and Pete was white-skinned, blonde hair, blue eyes, and I guess when they drafted him, they just put him where the whites were. And he ended up, it says here from this what he sent me, that we know he commanded troops during the Battle of the Bulge, and it says that, let's see, and it was, anyway, he talked about the dead of winter and all that stuff. And then he says that he was awarded medals for his work. And then he had a sister Marine who looked just like he did, and she drove around, was the chauffeur for commanders, except that she let them know over and over again that she was, in those days, colored, not white. And they told her if she just shut up and say that she was white, they could get her a better job. And she refused to do it.
Amazing. These stories are so rich and so meaningful. Thank you so much for calling and sharing yours with us. I really appreciate it. Thank you. Judd in Tyler, Texas. Hey, Judd, what's on your mind today?
Hey, Tom. First off, thank you for bringing that up at the beginning of the last hour. I'm 59 years old. I didn't know about Black Wall Street until 2 years ago, and that's really unfortunate. And it's it's something. It's a horrible part of history, but it needs to be taught. It absolutely does. The reason I called, I wanted to tell you that I saw a couple of parallels between this the shooting in Kentucky and one that happened a little over a year ago in Houston. And in both instances, police entry on a no-knock and no announce into a person's residence. And both...
this is like what happened to Breonna Taylor, in other words.
Yeah. And the same instance in Houston, two people were listed as drug dealers, which they weren't, but it was just bad information. They entered the house, and a gunfight ensued. And especially in this state, when you have a very liberal castle doctrine law, somebody's got a gun right beside their bed. You don't know who's coming in your house, and you're dead.
Yeah, I think that we need to end the whole no-knock warrant thing. In my opinion, it's a clear violation of the Fourth Amendment. But beyond that, it puts police at risk, as well as, obviously, people who are in those houses. And I just think it's wrong. Yes, if you have to knock and say police, somebody might flush the drugs down the toilet or something. So what? We're talking about people's lives here, and we're talking about basically the quality of life. Sarah in Tarzana, California. Hey, Sarah, what's on your mind?
A couple of things. One thing I wanted to talk about is that not every policeman is a gun-toting hondo out there. I have a family member who is in a police force where they actually teach and require community policing. And I don't want.
Yeah, and that's marvelous, Sarah. And there is more and more of that happening around the country. And in fact, one of the high points for me of this weekend was watching my Twitter feed and having people post video after video after video of police officers taking a knee, or police officer. There's one police officer, I believe he was a commander, saying, I'm with you guys. I'm going to march with you. We've got. I mean, they're. It's kind of an old trope. Oh, there's some good cops. And frankly, any police department that has even one bad cop in it, the entire police department is complicit, in my opinion. but there are some good police departments. Forgive the interruption, Sarah.
Yeah, well, that seemed to me very, very important. And being in Los Angeles, I was watching the results of all the senseless rioting out there, and people just going totally crazy, burning down. Like one poor guy in the Fairfax area, his whole business, 75 years life work, was a shambles. And it's like two sides of things. And my father, God rest him, used to tell me, the minute that you start saying all about any group of people, you're being a bigot. Because, even people with identical genes like Mark and Scott Kelly, one of them's now taller than the other, and they're identical twins. So something about being in space elongating them or something. But it just worries me to look around and just see all of the devastation and, directed at people who...
The devastation is devastation of property, Sarah. To call this senseless is to minimize it. There are people whose lives have been lost. Tens of thousands of people in the last century whose lives have been lost at the hands of police. And people are saying enough. A black person is 3.5 times more likely to be killed by a cop than a white person. An unarmed black person is 3 times more likely to be killed by police than a white person with no weapon. And if they're fleeing the scene, a black person is 6 times more likely to be killed.
Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
I mean, these are simple realities. We'll be back. It's 45 minutes past. And welcome back. John in Portland, Oregon. Hey, John, thanks for listening to X-Ray FM. What's up?
Hey, Tom, I'm glad to hear you're doing well, and I'm glad to hear that America is finally waking up. I just kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about a proposed way of holding police accountable. 2 ways, actually. A lot of times in these police-involved shootings of unarmed black people who are on the ground being choked to death, after the victim has sort of, I don't want to say been forgotten, but sort of been rolled into the list of other victims like Michael Brown, Trayvon Martin, Eric Gardner, Breonna Taylor. We could say their names, and we should. But there's another list of names that people don't say, and I think we should say and remember, and that's the list of the people who actually killed these people, like Philip Brailsford or Darren Wilson or Derek Chauvin or Geronimo Yanez. And in many of these instances, these are people who, just as your last caller said, you cannot, anytime you categorize an entire class of people in one way, you're being a bigot, and that's correct. But we can absolutely ascertain an individual's values and value to society, frankly, by their actions. And when we have murderers in police uniforms who are still in police uniforms after the families of the victims have accepted massive cash settlements that are usually paid for out of the city tax money, which is insult to injury. We cannot, like cash settlements combined with qualified immunity, it negates the possibility for any kind of retributive justice, both to the victim and to the society. Because what that means is that you cannot hold that individual responsible for their actions, and that as a society has to then add salt onto the wound in the form of money pouring out. And we should be fixing potholes and building libraries. Instead, we're
John, 2 thoughts on this. Number one, you can track a lot of this back to 1982 and that Supreme Court decision. And I will be surprised if by a year from now, that has not changed significantly, either by action of the Supreme Court or by action of Congress. I doubt it'll happen by action of Congress during the Trump administration, but wait until after the election. And secondly, there is a debate within news circles about whether to name cops, killer cops, for the same reason that you don't want to name mass shooters. The logic is somewhat
but the mass
different,
shooters
I think,
get locked
in
up.
terms of the motivation.
Now, the mass shooters get locked up, and I don't know.
Well, and not only that, the mass shooters are doing the mass shootings because they want their name in the paper. I don't think the killer cops are killing people because they want their name in the paper. I think they're frankly murderers. They're psychopaths. They're enjoying killing other people, and they're hoping that their names will never be in the papers. So,
exactly.
which actually makes a stronger case for your case.
Exactly. They hope their names will never be in the papers. And Tom, the way that it works is that if there's a murderer loose in our society, civilians become police officers, civilians procure training, procure arms and each other. They go out and they hunt that person down. We should do the same for killer cops. Civilians should arm themselves, train themselves, go find their addresses, hunt them down, arrest them, turn them.
No. You're not going to arm yourself and go hunt down anybody, John. That's just, I mean, you just blew up a totally rational argument. Sadly, we'll be back. It's 10 minutes before the hour. Hey, Thom Hartmann here. I have a new book out. It's called The Hidden History of Monopolies, How Big Business Destroyed the American Dream, and Ralph Nader wrote the foreword. It's available for pre-order wherever you find fine books. So we've got a new video up over at thomhartmann.com for people who support our program, and there's a really troubling concatenation of events events that are happening in the United States right now. We created these concentration camps for refugees seeking asylum. This was Stephen Miller's big project. And we've got concentration camps for children, concentration camps for male adults, concentration camps for female adults. And now we've got this virus sweeping through the United States, and people are starting to die in these concentration camps, which has provoked ICE or whoever's running them to deport hundreds of the children back to the countries that they came from without their parents, which is mind-boggling, and in many cases carrying disease. This is serious stuff, and we need to be talking about it. The new video is over at thomhartmann.com. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. I'm sorry, say what, Sean? Oh, Victoria Jones. Thank you. Bless you. And online with us is Victoria Jones. Victoria Jones is the chief Washington analyst with the DC radio company. Victoria Jones DC is her Twitter handle. And Victoria, I have noticed that, well, actually, I saw on my Twitter feed this morning a massive demonstration in Christchurch, New Zealand. People marching down the street in outrage over the murder of George Floyd and in solidarity with Americans who are outraged over police violence in this country. Is this happening all over the world? What's going on?
Yeah, it really is happening all over the world. I mean, Christchurch really is as far away pretty much as you can get. There are protests planned for tonight in Australia. They should actually be kicking off as far as Western Australia right about now. Everywhere. They're really everywhere. They have been happening already in Melbourne. Prime Minister Scott Morrison of Australia has had to address the issue of Aborigines dying in police custody on conservative radio, and has said some inflammatory things. They've even in Syria's northwest Idlib province, which, as you know, has been hammered by the Syrian government to seize control from opposition forces, 2 artists painted a mural on the shell of a ruined building, said, "I can't breathe," and "No to racism." So even in Syria, wow. That's extraordinary. And this is very interesting that I read in the New York Times today. In Lebanon, a group has compiled a document called From Beirut to Minneapolis, a protest guide to solidarity for protesters as a way to track state abuses. And Chile, an activist is cautioning demonstrators to protect their eyes from rubber bullets, because they have been blinded by rubber bullets. And so this is very interesting. But also, other governments are taking advantage of this politically as a way to exploit the situation. So there's a couple of different things going on simultaneously.
So, I know that there are, or I heard a news report this morning on NPR that there are a couple of governments that are not, shall we say, friendly to the United States that have been all over the coverage as a way of demonstrating how corrupt and evil the United States is. Sort of the way that we were looking at the umbrella protests in Hong Kong as a symptom of a corrupt state in China. Is that what you're talking about when you said government seeking to exploit this, or is there something else going on?
Yeah, and I'm not using exploit in a pejorative way. Just that you see an opportunity, and so you use it. Well, for example, China and the Hong Kong situation that's going on now. An American official on Saturday went after the ruling Communist Party on Twitter for cracking down in Hong Kong, and the Chinese spokesman cracked back on Twitter, can't breathe. That kind of thing is going on.
Right. We've got our own Uyghurs here. It's an oppressed minority. Do you think that the international outrage is? I know Australia has I've been and worked in Australia, and I've worked in Aboriginal community up in the Lockhart River, up in near Cairns, in that school system, in fact, and the Aboriginal history in that country is horrible. And what whites have done to Aboriginals. Do you think that is most of this countries with local minority communities who are rebelling against, who share a grievance basically with the black community in the United States against the white power structure? Or are these countries that are saying this is just another symptom of how bizarre and violent America has become, particularly since the Reagan Revolution and the hyper-militarization of our police here?
I think both things are going on. I mean, for example, in Paris, there have been protests. A young minority man there, who died. There has been a campaign about his death for about 4 or 5 years now, waged by his sister. And so that was highlighted again. And in other countries, so where you have immigrant populations who have not necessarily been treated well by the police, you're definitely seeing this, no question about it. Yeah.
Right. So
that's going on.
Yeah. So, but
let me mention one quick thing about the Australian situation, which is really very big over there. The relatives of David Dungay, he was an Aboriginal man, he said, "I can't breathe," 12 times before he died while being restrained by prison guards in 2015. They say they've been traumatized by footage of Mr. Floyd's death, and they want another investigation into Mr. Dungay's death now. So this is really resonating.
Remarkable. The world awakens. Victoria Jones, Chief Washington Analyst of the D.C. Radio Company. Victoria Jones, D.C. is her Twitter handle. Victoria, thanks for dropping by. It's always nice talking with you.
Thank you.
We'll be back with more of our program. We're going to be talking with, at the top of the next hour, Imam Khalid Latif, the former pastor for the New York Police Department.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann.
So we have a new video up for people who are supporters of the Thom Hartmann Program. Specifically, it's over at thomhartmann.com, talking about language, how we use language. Language matters tremendously. And we have chosen as a society, as a culture, as media, as political leadership, etc., not to refer to people like Steve Mnuchin, who threw thousands of people out of their homes illegally during the banking crisis, as looters, not to refer to Rex Tillerson, whose oil company has ravaged much of the third world, literally destroying people's lives, killing people, poisoning people. We don't refer to them as looters. We don't refer to the police who go into neighborhoods and kill people, minorities, particularly African Americans. We don't refer to them as looters, stealing their lives. But when black people rise up and say, no, enough, we call them looters. There's something wrong with this. Check it out. It's at thomhartmann.com. Well, it's an extraordinary time. This is the first full week of the Summer Free Speech TV Fund Drive. This is how we keep this network on the air. It's one of the things that helps keep this show on the air. If you find value in the product that we're producing, as it were, in the show that we're putting together, that a whole bunch of us that put a lot of work into, then please chip in. Please help us out. Help keep our show going and help keep us moving forward, and help keep us, or help us continue to spread the message of a better America, the possibilities of America. Yeah, it's so easy to throw stones, and I know that from time to time I just, I'll be reading news stories and just going, oh my God, this is just, this is terrible and this is terrible. But one of the things that I really try to do with this program is not just do complaint, TV and radio programming, but instead to ask the question, why is this? How did this come about? What's the history of this? And not just the recent history of this. What's the really deep history of this? How do we get down to the roots of these problems and solve them? To mangle a metaphor. And it's not simple and easy stuff. Louise and I put a lot of work into this program every single day. It's more than an 8-hour day just putting this program together for us. And the same is true of Sean and Nate and many of the other people who work on this program. And to do it and keep it going, there's infrastructure, there's costs, there's personnel, there's all that stuff. Plus, Free Speech TV, same thing. You've got a relatively small group of people. I think there's in the neighborhood of 20 people who work at Free Speech TV, which is really remarkably small for a television network, a national television network that is in literally tens of millions of homes. And if you include the internet, hundreds of millions of homes. And they're doing it on a shoestring. They've been doing it on a shoestring for 18, 19, 20 years, however long it's been. It's been quite a while. And I'm very proud and pleased that we've been part of Free Speech TV for, I believe, about a decade. And, a couple times a year we come to you and say, please help. And I realize, the coronavirus and all the unemployment and, it's a really tough time for a lot of people. And, if you're one of those folks, if you've lost your job, if you don't have any resources, don't feel bad about not being able to contribute. I absolutely understand, and nobody would think, poorly of you for that. If these are tight times or tough times, hang on, because I have a horrible feeling it's going to get worse before it gets better. But it will get better, and we will be part of making it better. And so if you have the means to help out Free Speech TV, if you have the ability to toss a few $100 or a few dozen dollars or even $5 or $10 toward Free Speech TV, or to become a sustaining member, to make a regular contribution that recurs every single month, that just is effortless, right? You give me your credit card number and just say, charge me $20 a month, and for the next year, or for the next 2 years, or for the next 6 months, or until I tell you to stop. And Free Speech will do that, and you help keep us going. And in fact, those sustaining gifts are among the very most important of all of our gifts, because those sustaining gifts help us budget. They help Free Speech TV know what's coming and what the expenses are going to be. Free Speech TV offers some premiums for people who make contributions. With a $20 gift, you have your choice. You can get the Thom Hartmann, proud student of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the car magnet that says, I'm voting, are you? with a $50 gift, again, 2 options. The Just Effing Vote tote bag, which is just brilliant, and the Free Speech TV webcam cover. Either one of those available with a $50 gift. With the $75 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program mug with my mug on that mug. It's not a terrible picture. I kind of like it. With a $100 gift, you get 2 Free Speech TV face masks. Last week, Norma called and said, I just ordered my face mask, my face mask. That's wonderful, and please consider the same thing. It's a $100 gift. That's a lot of money for Free Speech TV. It helps out a lot. With a $120 gift, you get the social distancing kit. That's 2 Free Speech TV face masks and the Free Speech TV hand sanitizer. With a $120 gift, you get your choice. You can either get the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, or you can get the, actually you get 3 choices, or the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Who Stole Your Vote and How to Get It Back. With a $240 gift, you can hop on the line and we'll have a Zoom meeting, as it were, and a virtual meet and greet. Off the air, unrecorded, just us. It'll be 5, 6, 8 people and me, and a small group, and we'll talk. And with a $1,000, and with a $360 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University box. That's the face masks, the Hidden History of the War on Voting, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, and with a $1,000 gift, you can come to Portland and hang out with us when all this craziness is over. Please call now, 877-378-8669. We need to keep this network going, and frankly, I'd like to keep the show going. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you so much. Midnight in Chernobyl.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. On the line with us is the university chaplain for New York University, the senior fellow and co-founder of the Many Institute of Multi-Faith Leadership and an adjunct assistant professor at NYU, Wagner, executive director of the Islamic Center at New York University, and the youngest chaplain in the history of the New York City Police Department at the age of 24, Imam Khalid Latif. Imam Khalid Latif, welcome to the program, and thank you for joining us today.
Well, thank you for having me.
I'm so glad you could join us. So I caught this extraordinary prayer you laid on Jake Tapper and all of the rest of us on CNN a while ago, and you were talking in your conversation and also in your prayer, you were talking about the intersection, essentially, that you saw between the way that COVID-19 is disproportionately killing people of color, particularly African Americans, and our crisis of policing and our crisis of culture in general, and the fact that while Donald Trump went out of his way to illegally send billions of dollars worth of weapons to Saudi Arabia so they could bomb civilians in Yemen, he was unwilling to buy PPE and things like that for our first responders. You pulled it all together as a single thread, and I would love you to speak to that, please.
Yeah, I mean, well, just as a quick point of clarification, I actually am a former chaplain for the NYPD. I haven't been in the position for a couple of years. But, in understanding, especially with myself living in New York City, which was the epicenter of the coronavirus, there's a lot of room to just pay attention to revelations of different kinds. And I think in moments like this, where it can create a lot of heaviness and difficulty, but can also create a lot of distance from individuals where we are not as interconnected and interdependent as we need to be, we fail to realize that what we deal with at times is just symptomatic of more deeply entrenched challenges and issues that will continue to come to surface unless we really deal with them head on. And you see that from the coronavirus and the impact that it's had, that yet again, it's very clear that elements of race and class dictate who has and who has not. And the systems that our country is built upon and are functioning off of even till today seek to cater to just a privileged majority demographic and quite often function at the expense of minorities of all backgrounds, and in particular, black people of color. So
you were the minister for the chaplain for the police department in New York City, and yet you're a minority. Do you have a fear of the police stopping you and your family? And what was your experience of working with the New York City Police Department? What lessons for today might have come out of that?
Yeah, I think people look at what is most apparent and they don't look at what exists at a deeper level. And the conversations that we have are not just about good cops and bad cops, because there's definitely a lot of good cops. And as we've seen with the unfortunate realities of George Floyd and so many else, there's also a lot of cops who are terrible cops and have an absence of ethics and morals. But whether you're a good cop or a bad cop, if the system overall is something that is bad, then a good cop or a bad cop in a bad system is still going to yield inequitous results at the end of the day. And we find across the board that there's a lot of challenges and a lot of difficulties. The fundamental basis of many of these systems, when they were built at a time where they sought to cater to a privileged demographic, and the experience of individuals who come from, the white Protestant heterosexual male background are as such that these were systems that sought to create unique experience, inclusive of law enforcement apparatus that was built and exists now at every level you can engage in, city, state, and federal, that seeks to still protect the best interests of a majority privileged class, where you find law enforcement, for example, engage in the enforcement of law. More often than not, it tends to be enforced upon individuals that come from lower social classes, people of color, minorities, immigrants, those who do not have that much power in their favor or at their disposal. And when you see also, consequently, where law enforcement tends to utilize practice that is outside of the scope of what is legal, it tends to infringe upon that same demographic that it more often than not enforces law upon, people of color, minorities, individuals who more often than not are black and brown, people who do not have that much power in their favor. And I think the idea of addressing symptoms rather than what the actual ailments are what render us to where we are today, and we find ourselves dealing with the same realities over and over.
So what specifically are the steps that you would suggest we take to reform policing in the United States? I mean, you've seen this up close and personal.
I mean, I think a step one is to think about more how you can engage in community policing and aspects of community involvement, and in, I think, a true embrace of real allyship. This is a conversation that needs to have a first step that engages black leadership, African-American leadership across the board, to take cues from with an understanding of just listening.
Forgive my interrupting, but we only have 2 minutes until we're going to hit a hard break here. But I remember these conversations in '92, I think it was, after Rodney King. Police departments having sensitivity training and bringing the black community in and talk. I remember these conversations in 1968 after Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King was murdered and American cities were on fire. I remember it well. How would this be different?
I think tokenization is a very real thing. And when you're able to create narrative that still has its fundamental base of a construct rooted in fear that synergizes relationships between government, media apparatus, and what a mass population perceives of a minority experience to be. The meetings that would take place at moments such as what you are referring to are not necessarily done to engage, but to create a kind of facade of engagement, and where you move beyond tokenization.
They were PR stunts, in other words.
It's the first recognizing it. Yeah, because it doesn't take a lot to necessarily appease a demographic. In the 90s, you're also at a very different point in time because you don't have technology, you don't have social media, you don't have a voice of, a people that can speak their own reality and their own truth, as you see so many coming to. And what it does is take away now the deniability from so many that these are things that exist on a systemic and structural level. And I think where you see people who are outraged from a minority standpoint, you see the opportunity for those who come from a majority in privilege.
Thank you so much for being with us today. It's been great speaking with you. The website, by the way, is icnyu.org. KLATIF is his Twitter handle. Imam Latif, thank you.
Thank you.
Great talking with you. We'll be right back.
This is the Thom Hartmann Program.
Back with more of the news of the day and your calls right after this. Stick around. And welcome back. Whoops, pushed the wrong button here. Let's see. Is it Kusail in Campo, California? Am I saying your name right?
Yes, sir. Kusai. Kusai.
Oh, it's an IE. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Kusai. Hey, Kusai, what's up?
First of all, I wanted you to know I'm an American by choice. I've been here for 45, 47 years. And then my point that I'm going to make is that there's a kind of a coalition or a connection between career politicians that make their way into politics through being law enforcement, district attorney generals, or what have you, and they really have no incentive to change because they need the support of the only union that the Republicans didn't destroy, which is the police unions.
Excellent point. How does that inform you about some of the former prosecutors like Kamala Harris and Amy Klobuchar?
Yeah, well, I mean,
is
look
that
at
what
their
you're
record.
talking about specifically? Or?
Yeah, well, them and a bunch of other ones on smaller scales, the ones that are in the small towns, in the small places that want to maintain their picture with a bunch of police officers standing around them saying they're law and order candidate and what have you.
Right. Yeah, I've noticed how and I don't think it's limited to that, by the way. I think that if you are in city government, you're interwoven with this system. I'm watching Bill de Blasio try to make excuses for the New York City Police Department after they've done inexcusable things, and you could just kind of tell that he's scared to death of the police union, frankly.
Well, absolutely. And another point, if I may, what do they train to police communities in Israel? Why do they send them to Israel to train? Who do they train on? They don't train on the Israeli population. They train on the Palestinian population. And you've seen what kind of training they get.
Yeah. Is that widespread? I've not heard that practice. I know that there are some police departments who have done training in Israel, but I didn't know it was that widespread. It is widespread.
It is widespread. And then the last thing, if I may, I've seen how police deteriorated in places like Lebanon and became a weapon against the population. And slowly but surely, I see this here happening as also the same way where we're deteriorating to a point where the police that were sworn to protect and serve is becoming more of an oppressive arm of the regime rather than part of the community.
Well, and we've certainly seen that in Turkey and in Hungary and in the Philippines and in Brazil and in Chile back during the Pinochet time. We could go on and on and on in all these countries that basically became authoritarian. Have you seen any countries that reversed that process, which is what we're talking about doing here?
The only one that had any hopes is Rwanda after the genocide. But this is a country that actually didn't lie to itself and kept saying that's not who we are. They figured out, no, this is who we are, and we better do something about it. But while here, we're lying to ourselves on a variety of levels. One of them is that, oh, that's not who we are. We think we're better than that. We're not. The other one is we no longer teach people the truth in school. We don't teach them about slavery. We don't even teach them about Thomas Jefferson that much. We take things we don't like out of history and put things that are foofy and nice, So we grow up, we grow a generation of people that not only don't know, never been told.
Yeah, we have an airbrushed history. There's no doubt about that.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for calling. It's great to hear from you, and thank you for your perspective, an informed perspective. It's coming up on 20 minutes past the hour. We'll be right back with more of your calls in just a moment. Stick with us. Our 1 hour free podcast recaps our show, and it's available wherever fine podcasts are found. And we have the full 3 hour podcast available over at thomhartmann.com if you want to really support our program. Hey, we have a new video over at thomhartmann.com for people who are supporters of our program. On this one, I'm digging into, or actually kind of taking issue with, a new article that's over on thenation.com titled, "Could Coronavirus End Globalization?" And they've got a bunch of analysts who are weighing in on this sort of thing. And my take is that this is going to be even bigger than that. This depression that we are sliding into is being softened right now by the Federal Reserve throwing $6 trillion at America's largest corporations. 1/3 of all economic activity for a year in the United States. Twice the annual federal budget. The Fed has just parked $6 trillion with a couple of hundred big companies. And it's just masking what's coming. It's going to get bad, and it could become fascist. And so check it out. It's over at thomhartmann.com, for the people who support our program. Thank you. And welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. An interesting story. Actually, it's been originally was reported over at the Daily Beast, but it's basically coming out of a study that was done at the University of Washington School of Public Health by epidemiologist Dr. Judith Malmgren, and what they found, Washington State was one of the first hotspots, and what they found was that the percentage of people who are becoming infected and symptomatic with COVID-19, in other words, who are getting sick, somewhat sick, really sick, and even dead, as a consequence of being sick with COVID-19, the age is dropping. And I think there's a very simple reason for this. For this virus, the low-hanging fruit, because it basically takes out people who are weakened. It puts your body, it inflames the endothelial cells in the blood vessel, the inside of the blood vessels, and produces these, which then produce clotting factors that clog up the kidneys, the brain, the lungs, the heart, the liver, with blood clots, and increasingly, muscle tissue and all these, and regardless of age. We thought this was a disease of the lungs, like pneumonia. It turns out it's not. The lungs just happen to also get clogged up with these blood clots. And so this disease picked off the low-hanging fruit first, which was older people in nursing homes, people who are, they don't have that much vitality. The course of this disease can be 3-4 weeks long. I mean, you can be knocked down on your ass for 4 weeks. And, Louise and I have a couple of friends, young people down in Texas who got this, and it just totally kicked their butts. And, these are young people. And now we're finding that many of these people in their 20s, 30s, 40s who get this disease also are having weeks and months later, and we're only 3 months into it here in the United States, so we really don't have the ability to look back, a year, 2 years from now. This virus didn't even exist in the human population, 5 months ago, 6 months ago. But it certainly appears that some people are even having lifelong or permanent damage that may well shorten their lives. cause them to more easily go into kidney failure, heart failure, strokes, things like this, as a consequence of having had this disease. So first it kills off the low-hanging fruit, as it were, the vulnerable population, the elderly population. Now it's going after younger people. 39%, this is in the state of Washington, where this first was visible in the United States. 39% of confirmed cases are under 39 years old. They're people between 20 and 39. And another 11% of cases are people under 19. And now there's this whole brand new syndrome that it was happening all over the country, and we didn't realize it was being caused by COVID-19, which is young people who are getting this inflammatory response and going into what seems like septic shock. So I suspect we're going to see, as time goes on, and this is just, a non-authoritative, uneducated guess, but, an observation, shall we say, and feel free to contradict me if you think I'm wrong about this. But I think that as so many of our elders have been killed off, about a third of all the 100,000, 104,000 people now who have died in the United States, at least half of them who died because Donald Trump dithered and lied and golfed and did rallies for 3 months instead of doing something about this. And you could even say it was longer than 3 months, because it was in November that our intelligence agencies first started warning Donald Trump of this. And we warned Israel in November of this. We had spies on the ground in China. We knew what was happening. And then in December, of course, December was when China announced it. And then January, all of January, during that time, in the month of January, Donald Trump was shipping ventilators and personal protective equipment from the United States to China. We were selling it to them. Trump was like, oh yeah, we'll sell off part of the strategic reserve. No problem, let's do it. 18 tons of this stuff. Because, hey, he didn't want to listen to scientists. Scientists, they lie about climate change. They lie about how old the world is. You can't trust scientists. And so here we are, 104,000 dead people. But about a third of them were people who were old and weak. And and an additional third of them, more or less, are people who were weak by virtue of poor nutrition. They were obese, they have diabetes, poor nutrition, or pre-existing conditions that may be diseases of poverty, or may simply be having had a tough life, or been born weak, or whatever it may be. But and then about a third of them are, it seems, maybe a little less than a third, who are dying, are people who just, for reasons we don't know, it just ripped them apart, this disease. And so I'm guessing as we go forward, what we're going to start hearing, particularly as I'm very concerned that these protests are exposing hundreds of thousands of Americans to this disease. We know about the super spreader phenomena that we're going to start seeing in July and August and September. Younger people melting down and having crises. And this is going to come back and bite us really badly. I'll pick up your phone calls after the break. It's 28
You're
minutes
listening
past the
to the
hour.
Thom Hartmann Program. Call 202-808-9925.
Viagra for your brain. It's the Thom Hartmann Program. Just don't tell Limbaugh. He'll want some. We'll be right back. Well, it's an extraordinary time. This is the first full week of the Summer Free Speech TV Fund Drive. This is how we keep this network on the air. It's one of the things that helps keep this show on the air. If you find value in the product that we're producing, as it were, in the show that we're putting together, that a whole bunch of us that put a lot of work into, then please chip in. Please help us out. Help keep our show going and help keep us moving forward. And help keep us, or help us continue to spread the message of a better America, the possibilities of America. Yeah, it's so easy to throw stones, and I know that from time to time I just, I'll be reading news stories and just going, oh my God, this is just, this is terrible and this is terrible. But one of the things that I really try to do with this program is not just do complaint, TV and radio programming, but instead to ask the question, why is this? How did this come about? What's the history of this? And not just the recent history of this, what's the really deep history of this? How do we get down to the roots of these problems and solve them? To mangle a metaphor. And, it's not simple and easy stuff. Louise and I put a lot of work into this program every single day. It's more than an 8-hour day just putting this program together for us. And the same is true of Sean and Nate and many of the other people that work on this program. And to do it and keep it going, there's infrastructure, there's costs, there's personnel, there's all that stuff. Plus, Free Speech TV, same thing. You've got a relatively small group of people. I think there's in the neighborhood of 20 people who work at Free Speech TV, which is really remarkably small for a television network, a national television network that is in literally tens of millions of homes. And if you include the internet, hundreds of millions of homes. And they're doing it on a shoestring. They've been doing it on a shoestring for 18, 19, 20 years, however long it's been. It's been quite a while. And I'm very proud and pleased that we've been part of Free Speech TV for, I believe, about a decade. And, a couple times a year we come to you and say, please help. And I realize, the coronavirus and all the unemployment and, it's a really tough time for a lot of people. And, if you're one of those folks, if you've lost your job, if you don't have any resources, don't feel bad about not being able to contribute. I absolutely understand, and nobody would think, poorly of you for that. If these are tight times or tough times, hang on, because I have a horrible feeling it's going to get worse before it gets better. But it will get better, and we will be part of making it better. And so if you have the means to help out Free Speech TV, if you have the ability to toss a few $100s or a few dozen or even $5 or $10 toward Free Speech TV, or to become a sustaining member, to make a regular contribution that recurs every single month, that just is effortless, right? You give me your credit card number and just say, charge me $20 a month, and for the next year, or for the next 2 years, or for the next 6 months, or until I tell you to stop. And Free Speech will do that, and you help keep us going. And in fact, those sustaining gifts are among the very most important of all of our gifts, because those sustaining gifts help us budget. They help Free Speech TV know what's coming and what the expenses are going to be. Free Speech TV offers some premiums for people who make contributions. With a $20 gift, you have your choice. You can get the Thom Hartmann, proud student of the Thom Hartmann University bumper sticker, or the car magnet that says, I'm voting, are you? With a $50 gift, again, 2 options, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, which is just brilliant, and the Free Speech TV webcam cover. Either one of those available with a $50 gift. With the $75 gift, you get the Thom Hartmann Program mug with my mug on that mug. It's not a terrible picture. I kind of like it. With a $100 gift, you get 2 Free Speech TV face masks. Last week, Norma called and said, I just ordered my face mask, my face mask. That's wonderful, and please consider the same thing. It's a $100 gift. That's a lot of money for Free Speech TV. It helps out a lot. With a $120 gift, you get the social distancing kit. That's 2 Free Speech TV face masks and the Free Speech TV hand sanitizer. With a $120 gift, you get your choice. You can either get the Just Effing Vote t-shirt, or you can get the, actually you get 3 choices, or the Ask Me About Free Speech TV t-shirt, or my book, The Hidden History of the War on Voting, Who Stole Your Vote and How to Get It Back. With a $240 gift, you can hop on the line and we'll have a Zoom meeting, as it were, and a virtual meet and greet, off the air, unrecorded, just us. It'll be 5, 6, 8 people and me, and a small group, and we'll talk. And with $1,000, and with a $360 gift, there's the Thom Hartmann University box. That's the face masks, the Hidden History of the War on Voting, the Just Effing Vote tote bag, the I'm Voting Are You car magnet, the Just Effing Vote t-shirt. And with a $1,000 gift, you can come to Portland and hang out with us when all this craziness is over. Please call now, 877-378-8669. We need to keep this network going. And frankly, I'd like to keep this show going. So please call now, 877-378-8669. Thank you so much. Coming up on this week's Science Revolution, how do we stop authoritarians like Trump and Bolsonaro from killing more people in this pandemic? Trump and Bolsonaro, the presidents of the United States and Brazil, are essentially refusing to do anything consequential about an epidemic that is killing massive numbers of their own country's citizens. Bill Freese drops by. He's the science policy analyst with the Center for Food Safety on the newly finalized federal regulations on GMOs. And Beyond Nuclear's Paul Gunter also drops by on how America is unprepared for a nuclear accident during this pandemic. Find the Science Revolution wherever you get great podcasts. Welcome back. Thom Hartmann here with you. You know, we have been saying for some time, many Americans anyway, have been saying for some time, and I think America was united in saying this in 1974 in the case of Richard Nixon, that no man in America should be above the law. No man or woman in America should be above the law. Certainly no president should be above the law. Donald Trump obviously has placed himself above the law and has done so aggressively, refusing to respond to congressional subpoenas, legal congressional subpoenas, refusing to respond to investigation, et cetera, et cetera. You know that whole shtick. But the police also have been placed above the law by this 1982 Supreme Court decision. So this morning on Fox and Friends, Tom Cotton, the Republican senator from Arkansas, went on and did his bully boy thing. I'm a tough guy. People get out of line. You just need to just shoot them. Yeah? I mean, that's not literally what he said. Here's literally what he said. Anarchy, rioting, and looting needs to end tonight. If local law enforcement is overwhelmed and needs backup, let's see how tough these Antifa terrorists are when they're facing off with the 101st Airborne Division. Right. Yeah, that's what we need. Instead of saying that we're no longer going to allow police officers to exist above the law, if you kill somebody, even if it's in the course of doing your job, if you kill somebody, if I kill somebody, if any of us kill somebody or injure somebody severely, there will be an immediate investigation, and if there's even the smallest whiff that we did it maliciously or intentionally, boom, we're in jail. The single exception to that are police officers. And the reason for that, as I said earlier, is this 1982 Supreme Court decision. And I would think that if you want to stop the protests, if you want to stop the uprising, or at least slow it down, that you would come out and say, we really need to reconsider how we're doing this. Our police, policing was functioning fairly well prior to 1982. It's not like our police weren't able to take care of themselves or handle things. It's just that they've turned into an occupying force in the last 40 years. I mean, this is another piece of the Reagan Revolution that needs to be repudiated. But, oh no, Tom Cotton, he's like, oh no, we're going to be a tough guy. And meanwhile, Donald Trump hiding in the basement, the bunker boy, they're calling him now. Bunker boy is trending on Twitter, hiding in his bunker in the White House. As, the rest of America, as Joe Biden is going out and visiting people in a multiracial group in this church. Dave in Federal Way, Washington. Hey, Dave, how's our favorite former intelligence officer doing today?
Hey, good, Tom. Look, hey, I wanted to mention, Hannah Arendt. You've talked about Hannah Arendt before, right? And she said that America essentially has a firewall against tyranny. Certain concepts, although they're not unique to America, like individual liberty, justice, and democracy, we actually uniquely act upon them, right? Well, I tend to disagree.
Well, this was back in the 1950s when she was writing that.
Right. But I agree with the previous caller. Look, and I agree with you. These things. I'm not going to use the fascism word anymore. This is the last time I'm saying it because I'm worried that they're going to start criminalizing that word. Donald Trump and his administration. Okay, I'll say these authoritarian practices, they creep up over time. Okay, and what I've noticed is, and we tend to accept them, just like the Germans in the 1930s started accepting them. And the thing is my point is I have noticed an exponential increase in the competence of Donald Trump's advisors, not Donald Trump himself. All right, we've got his number. All right, but his advisors, ever since he escaped, impeachment, they've gotten more and more competent. All right, and what I'm worried about is the Osama bin Randy moment. What I call the Osama bin Randy. When Randy Rhodes, she was talking truth to power about Osama bin Laden. All right, it's just the right or the wrong timing, depending on how you look at it, where her callers that routinely called her show because she questioned Osama bin Laden's guilt because he hadn't admitted to anything. As a matter of fact, he denied it. He denied it at first. But consistent callers, liberals, to her show turned on her like a pack of rabid dogs, right? They called her Osama bin Randy, right? And what I'm worried about is in this regime that we now live in, we all look at the military as above racism, above the fray of social, unrest and turmoil, right? And a good solution would be to distract everybody with a foreign war. And my main point is these civil upheavals do more often than not, result in the expansion of a foreign conflict, or the start, at least, of a foreign conflict to distract everybody.
Well, and this is what Donald Trump, in 2012, when President Obama was running for re-election, on 3 different occasions, Donald Trump tweeted that any minute now, Obama is going to start a war with Iran, because that's being a war president is how you get yourself reelected. So he has believed this for, at least 8 years, and or longer than that, actually, I would say. And it seems to me like he's trying to stir up trouble with China. He's trying to stir up trouble with Iran. God only knows what cornered rats are the most dangerous rats. I mean, even I cornered a mouse once and it tried to attack me. I mean, it's like, and Donald Trump feels like he's in a corner, but even a foreign war would be better than Tom Cotton saying that we should turn the military against our own people. I mean, that is just plain old flat out flaming nuts. Anyhow, Dave, thank you. Emmanuel in Chicago. Hey, Emmanuel, what's up?
Hey, Mr. Hartmann. I heard your rant this morning about looting the corporate, what I call corporate lords, looting the American people, and I thought it was just excellent motivation for those who enjoy the white privilege of to understand that privilege is very flimsy. And
it's very thin.
It's very thin. If you look at the history of America, it's always been about the corporate lords getting slave labor. I mean, the first slaves in America were white people, and it went on from there to the Revolutionary War, where the corporate lords actually turned brother against brother. That Revolutionary War wasn't about slavery and freeing slaves. It was about the industrial North needing labor and cheap labor. And it went from there to the folks in sweatshops having to create unions because they were using even the white, those who think they're enjoying white privilege now, they had them in sweatshops and they had to create unions to come up out of there. And when that happened, they went overseas. It's always been about the corporate lords getting slave labor, and they don't care if it's white or black. And
yeah, I'm with you. Although it's a lot easier to exploit people who are already burdened by large cultural and institutional structural oppression, essentially. But in essence, the Reagan Revolution, the key to the Reagan Revolution was destroy the unions, destroy working people's power, take away political power, take away economic power from them, throw them into debt, You know, back in 1951, Russell Kirk published a book called The Conservative Mind. And in that book, in 1951, he said, he kicked off the modern American conservative movement. He's the guy who informed Barry Goldwater and William F. Buckley and all these guys. And he said, if the American middle class, which at that point in time was just emerging as a result of the New Deal policies, working people working in factories were getting wealthy faster, at a faster percentage than were billionaires. They were multimillionaires back then. And he said, if these middle-class people continue to get sufficiently wealthy, you will hit a point where they will start demanding political power. They will start demanding a say in their workplaces. The women will start demanding political power. Minorities will start demanding political power. Gay people will start demanding. When you see this, and young people will no longer know their place. And he said, when you see that happen, you know that the destruction of America is imminent. And in 1951, he published that book, and everybody laughed at him, except for Barry Goldwater and his friends. And then in the 1960s, when the birth control pill was legalized in 61, leading to the sexual revolution, as it were, and women now could go into the workplace because they could control whether or not, they could control their own reproductive. Then you saw that. You saw young people saying, no, I'm not going to go to Vietnam. You saw the Black Power movement. You saw the gay rights movement. And all these conservatives all across the United States, they were like, holy crap, Russell Kirk was right. We've got to destroy the middle class. We've got to throw them into poverty. We've got to throw them into debt. Otherwise, we can't control them.
You're listening to Thom Hartmann. Visit ThomHartmann.com for audio and video archives.
And that was the essence of the Reagan Revolution, and it has been at the core of Republican rule for 40 years now. We'll be back. And welcome back. Johan in Los Angeles. Hey, Johan, what's up?
Hey, it's 104,000, you said? 404,000 deaths? For the COVID-19?
Yeah, actually, it's been a day or so since I've looked. I'm not sure what the exact number is, but yeah.
And then police brutality and all things going on. Do you think this is the plague of the birthers?
The plague of the birthers? It's 104,500 Americans dead, by the way. I'm sorry, the plague of the what?
Birthers. It's the name of the book.
I don't.
The birth?
I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, it's
BIRTHERS?
BIRTH and then DEARTH. Birthers. Huh. Name of the book.
Oh, what would that be? A shortage of babies being born, you mean?
Yeah, to control the population. Yeah.
Right. I'm not familiar with it.
Yeah, it's by Ben Wattenberg. Yeah.
Yeah, I doubt there's a relationship there if you're trying to tie it to COVID, because COVID is mostly not killing people of reproductive age.
People are dying, like black people are dying, so like more than the white ones, and then so
yes,
it's just part of like birthers, where he tried to explain not many white babies are being born, so they become minority.
Well, that's real. I mean, in fact, right now the number of white people being born is smaller, is a minority relative to the number of people of color who are being born in the United States. And so, 20 years from now, the United States will have a voting population that's majority minority. And, I see that as something that is healthy. It's realizing the pluralistic ideal of America, frankly. Johan, thanks for the call. Joan in Rochester, Minnesota. Hey, Joan, thanks for watching Free Speech. What's up?
Well, I wanted to tell you that in early 2000, I watched a controversial talk show. And on that talk show was a secret filming of a police station in Minneapolis, Minnesota, where the military was training the police. And I think that's when they started using the tasers, and then there were tanks in some of the cities and things like that. And instead of having everyday people have a group that they can turn to, like the police force, if the military is going in there and training these people, most of these men or some of them, then we don't have, as an average person, anybody to turn to for help. And I think that is part of what is going on with these deaths of the black people. And another thing, this is my second thing, I think that the police stations or the police are being infiltrated, or some of them, by the supremacists. There are 974 hate groups in the United States. And some of those people are going to get jobs in the police station and take care of the minority people that they're trying to control.
Well, that's absolutely true, Joan, and it's well documented. And they're doing it in the military, too, and becoming basically evangelists. Joan, thank you for the call. And it's very troubling. Mikey Weinstein actually tried to call this out at the U.S. Air Force Academy in Colorado. Wrote a book about it. He's been on this program. We'll be right back. Thom Hartmann here. Did you know that Chief Justice John Roberts, back when he worked for Ronald Reagan, came up with a way that Congress and the White House could get around the Supreme Court? Specifically, they were trying to blow up Roe v. Wade and Brown versus Board, but it could be used by Democrats right now. It's fascinating. It's in my new book, The Hidden History of the Supreme Court and the Betrayal of America, available wherever fine books are sold. Welcome back. David in Spotswood, New Jersey. Hey, David, what's on your mind today?
Hey, back in 2012, I received a credential, a certified fraud exam designation, and I wanted to get what was called a QTAM reward. And so I looked at the biggest budgets of my local state governments, and it was the police budgets. They were over 50%. So I started, I'll make this very short now. I did an investigation and came up with some preliminary numbers, and I went and spoke and had a couple of beers and a couple of coffees with the local police in these precincts. And I pointed out to them that there was turnover, the budgets had grown, and their pay had stayed flat, which they agreed with and begrudged. And what I got is that everything you said is correct. You know, they're angry and you know, they might even be sadistic, but the main what ticks them off, and I think it's what's ticking them off in these riots. I don't know about Mr. George Floyd, but what's going on with the police is that when they saw the CNN reporter, they saw a minority that makes more money than them, and then the other sadistic emotions came about.
Yeah, I think they saw a minority, period, but I get what you're saying, David. And it's really interesting that Omar Jimenez, I believe is his name, a black man was arrested by the police, a CNN reporter, on live TV, while 2 blocks away, a white CNN reporter was being treated very respectfully by the police. And that should tell us a whole awful lot. Nick in Chicago. Hey, Nick, what's on your mind?
Hey, Tom. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
You had a caller about a half hour ago mention where the police unions lie with in all this, and I think along with your qualified immunity suggestion, I think this is something else we need to look after or look into if we want to really end the police violence. And here's my elaboration to this. Anytime that we've had an officer do something like this, no one's ever talked about who's protecting these guys. I think a lot of people just assume it's just probably a lawyer from somewhere or the DA is in on it. But no one's brought it up ever since then. And the only reason I say that is because I think they're working really quietly. I live in Chicago, and it really bothered me why no one was talking about it until Mayor Lightfoot came out one day talking about police reform. The next day, the local FOP was screaming bloody murder about it. And then it hit me. This is why no one's talking about the unions, because whatever it is they're doing, I don't know exactly what it is that they're doing, and I would leave that to an investigative journalist to really find that out. Right. And I think you're going to find something that happened along with the Catholic Church. Now, pedophile priests and racist cops are two different things. I get that. But I would contend that you have that same layer of protection along with the qualified immunity protecting these cops.
Yeah, I get it. And what we need, and Nick, we need police and we need policing. And thank you for the call. And nobody is suggesting we should do away with police. And I certainly don't want to be putting a target on the back of police. Frankly, I think that cops like, the fellow who murdered George Floyd they are the ones who are provoking. If anybody is going to be moving against police officers, they're the ones who are provoking that, not someone who's saying, it's time for us to turn policing into a profession. I've told this story many times. I lived in Europe for a year. I had several interactions with the police while I was there. They are extraordinarily professional. They are very well paid. You have to have a college degree to be a police officer in Germany. And what do you study? You study the law. And, it's just, and I'm a graduate of the Georgia Police Academy. I for 2 years, I was a licensed private detective. I didn't practice it. I was writing books about it, but, I've been there. I've seen that. I know a lot of cops. I have friends who are cops. One of my best friends was, a small town sheriff in Georgia. And I can tell you, it is not, nobody's trying to tear down or burn down the police departments here, but we have a problem with policing in this country, and it's one that goes way back. Peter in Chicago, it says here you want to disagree with me. We got a minute to the end of the show. What's on your mind?
Okay, well, Tom, that's the first time I've heard you talk positively about cops. Last week you were all over them, saying how bad they are, and we got to change.
No, it's not the first time, Peter. Come on, give me a break.
The majority of police do a great job. And let me ask you this. Who Tony Timpa is?
I'm sorry, Peter, your phone is breaking up. I didn't understand your last sentence.
Do you know who Tony Timpa is?
No, I do not.
He's a man who was killed by Dallas police the exact same way George Floyd was in 2016. And the only difference is he was white, so no one really cared. No one said anything. The fact that George was killed is an outrage, and those cops will pay the price. Justice takes time. For all the liberals out there on TV talking about, we need this, we need that now, you're not going to get it. So all of you guys need to pull back the rhetoric to calm this down, or the military is going to have to go in and start taking.
Yeah, and if the military goes in, then you are going to have a problem. You're going to have a real serious problem. Peter, thank you for the call. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place. In the meantime, don't forget democracy is not a spectator sport. This country doesn't function if its people don't participate. So please get out there, share the good word with people, as it were, and participate in your democracy. Tag you're it. We'll see you tomorrow. Be good to yourself and people around you. It's a tough time for everybody right now. We'll see you tomorrow.
You've been listening to Thom Hartmann. For audio and video archives, visit thomhartmann.com.
We say